I know you're from out here originally, but I don't know a lot about your story. So I feel like before we get into politics and matters that matters at hand, why don't we talk about you and where you started?
Well, that's where my politics come from. I mean, I'm from Southern California. I was born in San Francisco, but moved to L.A., to Studio City, not far from here. And then
where did you live in Studio City, just on a personal note?
Laurel Terrace.
I grew up right up in there, too.
Yeah.
Laurel Terrace.
Laurel Terrace. So it's kind of up Laurel Canyon.
Yeah, Hebrew Heights, as it's now known. Yes, that's where all the Jewish kids, when I went to North Hollywood High, they lived up in Hebrew Heights.
The Eagles lived on our street. I remember that, or some of the, this was in the 70s.
And they would call it the Donnas, because they had the Donna Pagitas and the Donna Dolores, all the Donna streets up there. Well, that'll bring me back to an interesting subject in a moment, but keep going. So you grew up in Studio City.
Yeah, and then my parents got divorced, which was the law then, as you remember.
Sure, in the 70s.
And my mom became an artist, also required, and so I moved with my dad and my brother down to San Diego.
How old were you?
I was in first grade.
So you're young.
Yep. And my father was in the news business. He worked at Channel 7 here as an anchor in L.A., Eyewitness News.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to work for CBS in San Diego, and so I grew up there. But the point is, I'm from California. My family's from California. They're very proud of being from California. They never stopped talking about the state and how it was sort of the highest level of awesomeness. And if you didn't live here, you were unfortunate. And everything about California is better than every other place. From our schools to our infrastructure to our people, best-looking women, best food. Like, everything about California was the best. I mean, that I marinated in that, and you probably did too if you grew up here. Like, this was the greatest place. And then I left, and I went to school on the East Coast, and I moved to Washington. I got caught up in that and journalism. But I would come back to California, obviously, a lot, and I watched the state change just profoundly, and not just politically. In fact, that was the least interesting change that I watched. I saw it change demographically, but mostly I saw it change economically. And it became a place where normal people just couldn't really thrive.
So you grew up in Studio City and up above Dupars.
Yeah, on Laurel Terrace up there. And then in 1976, when I was 6 years old, about to turn 7, my parents got divorced. And I moved, and my mother left the country, and I moved with my dad and my brother to La Jolla. And this happened at basically the same time that he got fired from ABC here in L.A., where he was an anchor.
So you guys were up in, for people that are listening around the country, sort of the house from Boogie Nights kind of area when they went to Alfred Molina's house and the kid was throwing the firecrackers. That was kind of
the
up
Eagles lived right down the street. Yes,
yeah, that was
to give you some sense of where we lived. Yeah.
So your mom leaves the country.
Mm-hmm.
That's unique.
Yeah, we felt so at the time, but actually, no, it wasn't. It was not unique. It was not even unusual, really. I mean, she, I think, had to find herself or whatever.
What country did she go to?
She went to France.
Did she have any connection to France?
You know, I don't honestly. I mean, the truth is, I don't really know, because I never saw her again. But
that is, I'm putting on my Loveline hat here because I've talked to a lot of people, and I was sort of estranged from my mom as well. So I kind of identify with this, which is I've said to Dr. Drew many times, when a father abandons the family, it's sort of it's a lot of biology. It's a lot of like, I want to move to Florida and bang a cocktail waitress.
Exactly.
So I'll send you a teddy bear
for
Christmas. And meanwhile, I want to introduce you to my lady friend.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of that. But I said, when a woman leaves the family, there's something going on,
of course,
deeply psychologically with the woman. And so your mom must have been going through something very profound.
And I mean, she was a drug and alcohol person is the truth of it. And she had a completely bizarre life to the extent I know much about it. I don't really know a ton about it. She died 7 years ago. So she left when I was 6, and she died when I was, 43. So, almost 40 years.
And never...
No, never talked to her.
Never a word.
No. And so my aunt called me when she died. She lived on a farm in the Pyrenees. I guess I've never been there. My brother and I were her only heirs. She'd been married a couple of times. She was married to David Hockney's boyfriend for quite some time. A little strange. Right. Yeah. A guy called Mo McDermott. I don't know, whatever. It was and she herself is a sculptor, apparently. I'm not an expert on her life, and I've meant to go back and learn something about it, but I just have such a busy life myself that I haven't.
Is there there's some parallels here, although my mom never left Valley Village.
Is she still alive?
She's still alive, and much of what I've learned a lot from people that inspire me and are out creating and doing super positive things, but I've probably learned more from people that are fuck up.
Oh, for sure. Are you kidding? I've learned by the way, I've learned nothing from succeeding myself. Not one thing. Success tells you nothing other than keep doing what you're doing, kid, which is terrible advice always.
Right.
Only failure teaches you, and other people's failures are just remarkable templates for avoiding disaster.
So I think you and I seem to share this set of values, mindset, default setting, whatever you want to call it, which is we don't have time for the fluff, pie in the sky sort of artist kind of nonsense, hippie, flower power, whatever, because we realize it's all just veiled. It's all depression and substance abuse veiled in this free to be you and me kind of thing. Like I discovered that as well from my mother.
But you have to grow up around it to know that, and I don't think I've ever quite put it as well as you just did. But that's right. It's all a cover actually for what's really sad. It's like a lot of this stuff is a nicer way of saying, I'm like a sad drunk with a blow problem. No one wants to hear that. So it's like, no, really, I'm an artist. And it's very complicated. It's actually not complicated. You're shit-faced every day. There's nothing complicated about that. And until you stop, it's not getting better, okay?
And also I've found this from my own mother and experiences, and I think you guys now see it out on the streets or the protests or college campuses. Just below the veneer of it's all good vibes and you can't judge and we're all just made in our creator's likeness or Mother Nature. It's all about earth and nature and holding hands and kumbaya is an unfettered rage. Crazed rage that, as a matter of fact, the whole reason we're getting this good vibes and we'll put the daisies in the barrels of the rifles is because just below it is this simmering rage.
Exactly.
And you see it. It's funny. You'll see a manifestation of it. You'll see these liberal college professors, female, they're wearing a hemp sweater that they knitted themselves, and they just left a drum circle, and they're eating granola from a hand-thrown pottery jar and something. And then the second you crack that veneer, they start screaming, like, get some muscle in here, get these guys out. Like, it's like, where did the crazed rage come from?
I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from their unsatisfying personal lives, from their, absent or alcoholic fathers, from they're all mad at their dads.
They're all mad at their dads. Everyone who's mad at the system, everyone who's mad at the government, everyone's mad at Uncle Sam is mad at their dad.
100%. I love my dad. I've always loved my dad. For all the problems I've had in my life, most of them that I've created myself and some that I didn't. The one thing I've had is a really good father. So one of the reasons I never talk about my childhood is because actually I had a great childhood. It's just, it was weird, but it was great.
Well, I'm fascinated. And the situation with the mom is, in my humble opinion, your dad did everything he could to make that mountain into a molehill.
Oh, totally. And not only a molehill, but actually a super fun ski hill. We had a great time.
But there's still an element of a son being abandoned by his mom that is sort of there. I don't know that you think about it every day. I don't know if it affects you. I just know from a sort of psychodynamic way, it's kind of there, right? I mean, did you have to...
I bitterly hated her, if that's what you mean. Yeah, she didn't like us, and she was, I'm leaving some stuff out. I'm not whining. I'm just saying, this stuff it's never as simple as your memory suggested. No, she was not a good mom and cruel, and you can just imagine, or just trust me, she was. And she was cruel to my brother, which is the thing that, if I'm being honest, really upsets me most. I have my younger brother's my best friend. He's a year and a half younger than I am. Lives walking distance from me in Washington. And in fact, he's coming out to LA. I'm having dinner with him tomorrow night. But, so anyway, whatever. I'm not getting into it. But the point is, she, was not a good mother. And so, and some of us mad about it. What I was so struck by, though, here's what I learned from it. So all these years she's gone. I don't know what happened to her. I don't know where she is. I ran into one of my cousins when I went to boarding school on the East Coast, and one of my cousins was there. I didn't even know we were cousins. That's part of the result of having a screwed up family is you run into relatives you didn't know you had. And so he tells me, "Oh yeah, your mother's in France or in Europe somewhere." "Oh really? Okay." So I say to my wife, I get married really young. I get married at 22, in part because I found the perfect woman to marry, in part because I thought I want to create like a really happy, stable, big family like I didn't have, and I want to be a normal parent, and I just want, you know what I mean? I think it's pretty normal.
Right.
But I always said to my wife for 25 years, I said, the one thing I'm worried about is when I get a call from someone saying, they found your mother's body, or are you related to so-and-so? Is this your mother? And, I said, I know someday that's going to happen. I have no idea where she is. God knows what she's doing. But someday she will die. And I said, I'm really worried that I'm going to melt down. Mm-hmm. And it's going to wreck my life. And this whole facade that I've built over the years of normal person living normal life will just implode. And she always said, no, that's not true. And she was right. Actually, when it actually happened, and my aunt from the Grass Valley here, who runs an organic mutton farm, who I don't really know, but thinks she grows a little weed too. Very nice. She calls me and she's like, your mother's dying of lung cancer in France. And I was like, my mother? Because my dad got remarried, and I think if my stepmother's my mother, I mean, I love her so much. No, she goes, no, your mother. She named her. What the hell is she doing in France? She lives there. Why does she have lung cancer? Because she never stopped smoking, and they don't treat lung cancer in France, so she's dying. You need to go visit her. I was like, really? I don't even know her. What? And then she died, I think, the next day. I was able to, by the end of the week, I was like, yeah, people die. It didn't really affect me, actually. And I think the lesson is, if you live like if you just pretend to be a normal person long enough, if you pretend that you've conquered your problems over time and just sort of act like, I grew up in a perfectly happy Mormon family in Idaho Falls. If you act like that for 30 years, it becomes true.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? It's real. I actually am healthier than I used to be because I pretended to be.
I completely concur. I also share that value, and we have a lot of conflicting messages in our society, because there's a lot of people who say, well, come on, that's your blood. Now that's your mom. Now come on, you'll never have another mom. There's a lot of isms that are about you only have one mom.
So true.
She brought you into this world, and it's a lot of that. And I have kind of this.
Can you stop with that? How'd you know that? That's so funny you said that.
I don't, for some reason.
Because those people exactly. It's why I never talk about it with anyone, because I run into those people.
They're hooked on that. And I have the same kind of relationship with my mom, too, which is, I remember one time she got upset at me because we didn't really have a relationship, and my parents were estranged, and I just grew up on my own, and my mom wasn't involved with my life. And she didn't move away, but she emotionally moved away. And one time, I think when I was getting married, she found out about it somewhere else. And she said, how come you didn't tell me? She was angry. And I said, Mom, I got about 100 people on a list to talk to about things in my life, and then I'll get to you. You're not on, You didn't make the cut.